"Admiral, we're receiving another distress packet from Proxima Centauri," called out Communications Officer Hanbit, his voice tight with concern. "Same as before, their star's becoming unstable. They're predicting total system failure within 2 months." Jiwoo nodded gravely. "How many souls are we talking about?" "Their transmission indicates roughly 8 million remaining," Hanbit replied. "They've already lost 3 colony worlds to radiation surges." The rescue fleet, 15 ships strong, represented the largest humanitarian mission in Earth's history. Each vessel carried essential supplies, medical equipment, food synthesizers, and the revolutionary terraforming modules that might save the alien civilization. The storage bays were packed with prefabricated shelters and water purifiers. Earth had stripped its own emergency reserves to mount this mission. Lieutenant Minji approached with a datapad. "Admiral, the last supply check is complete. Medical. Ship Kindness reports all vaccines and surgical units secured." "Good," Jiwoo said, taking the pad. "And the terraforming crews?" "Ready to deploy within 6 hours of arrival. They've been running simulations on compatible atmospheres. Not everyone. Back home supported the mission." The memory of last month's Security Council meeting still burned in Jiwoo's mind. Angry voices arguing that Earth should focus on its own problems instead of helping unknown aliens. "We barely recovered from the climate wars," General Park had shouted, pounding his fist on the table. "Our resources should go to rebuilding our own cities, not saving some creatures we've never even seen." But in the end, humanity's better nature had won out. "We help because we can," President Do-hyun had said simply. "If we turn our backs on suffering when we have the power to end it, what kind of species are we?" Jiwoo's thoughts were interrupted. As her second-in-command, Captain Somin joined her at the viewport. "Penny for your thoughts, Admiral?" Somin asked quietly. "Just wondering what they'll be like," Jiwoo answered, eyes still fixed on the stars. "Will they look at us and see saviors, or just another threat? I suppose we'll find out soon enough. We break into normal space near Proxima in 18 hours. What neither of them knew, what no human knew, was that their transmissions were being intercepted. At the edge of the Proxima system, hidden behind the shadow of a dead moon, 3 sleek warships hung in space like predatory fish. Their hulls were dark, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making them nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Inside the lead vessel, Commander Tai-hyun of the Dole Empire studied the human communications with growing interest. His long fingers tapped against the command console as he translated their primitive language. "A rescue mission," he said, his voice a low rumble that carried across the bridge. "How convenient for us." His second, a battle-scarred veteran named Jin-young, tilted his head. "You believe their story?" "Whether it's true doesn't matter," Tai-hyun replied. "These humans have never encountered our kind before. They don't know the rules of this sector." He gestured to a star chart where dozens of conquered worlds glowed in dull colors. "We've spent centuries establishing our dominance here. We can't allow a new spacefaring race to gain influence with the lesser species." Jin-young studied the tactical display showing the human fleet's formation. "They don't appear to be heavily armed. Their ships are designed for cargo and transport, not warfare." "Precisely why we strike now," Tai-hyun said, a cold smile forming. "Better to crush them before they realize their potential. The intelligence division reports this is merely an expeditionary force. Their homeworld has much greater industrial capacity." In the shadows of the command deck, Science Officer Yoon-ji frowned. "The analysis of their communications suggests they truly believe they're on a humanitarian mission. Perhaps we should observe longer before—" "Your concern is noted and dismissed," Tai-hyun cut her off sharply. "The High Command wants information on these humans, and a display of our power will prevent future incursions. We will let them enter the system, then strike when they're committed to their approach." Back aboard the Hope's Horizon, Admiral Jiwoo reviewed the final approach plans with her staff. Medical teams prepared their equipment, while terraforming specialists ran last-minute checks on their machinery. Throughout the fleet, excitement mixed with apprehension. This would be humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization in need. "We're making history," Jiwoo told her officers during the final briefing. "Remember your training, show respect, And remember why we're here: to help, not to judge or control." As the fleet accelerated toward Proxima Centauri, carrying hope and humanity's compassion among the stars, Commander Tae-hyun gave quiet orders to his gunners. The Dole warships powered up their weapons systems and prepared to teach humans a brutal lesson about galactic politics. The trap was set. The rescue mission would soon become a massacre, one that would forever change humanity's place in the cosmos. The rescue fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, their massive engines cooling as they switched to standard propulsion. 15 ships arranged in a peaceful formation, their hulls gleaming white against the darkness of space. From the command deck of the flagship Hope's Horizon, Admiral Ji-woo Kim watched as the dying red star came into view. Beautiful, even. "In its death throes," she murmured, noting the violent solar flares visible even from this distance. Navigation Officer Jun-ho looked up from his console. "We're picking up the distress beacon more clearly now, Admiral. It's coming from the third planet." "Any sign of their ships?" Ji-woo asked, scanning the tactical display. "Nothing yet," replied Tactical Officer Sun-hee, "but there's a lot of debris in the outer system. Could be remnants of evacuation attempts." Ji-woo nodded. "Take us in, standard approach. Medical ships in the center of the formation. Let's keep our scanners at maximum. That star is unstable." As the fleet began its journey, inward Dr. Hyunjin entered the bridge. He was the mission's chief medical officer, responsible for coordinating the thousands of healthcare workers aboard the medical flagship UNSC Mercy. "Admiral, my teams are ready," he reported. "We've prepared treatment protocols based on the physiological data they sent. As soon as we make contact..." The ship's alarm cut him off, blaring suddenly through the command deck. Sun-hee's hands flew over her console. "Multiple contacts," she shouted. 3 large vessels emerging from behind the 5th planet's moon. On the main view screen, 3 black ships appeared, their hulls angular and predatory compared to the smooth lines of the Earth vessels. They accelerated rapidly, moving to intercept the rescue fleet. "They're powering weapons systems," Sun-hee reported, her voice tight. Ji-woo straightened her uniform. "Open a channel. All frequencies, universal translator. Active." The massive command vessel Hope's Horizon glided silently through the void, its blue engines cutting through space like gentle flames. Admiral Ji-woo Kim stood at the viewport, her weathered face reflecting in the glass as she watched the stars blur by. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity as Earth's finest worked their stations. The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, Admiral." "This is Admiral Ji-woo Kim of the Earth Humanitarian Fleet," she said clearly, her voice steady despite the tension. "We come in peace, responding to distress signals from this system. We carry medical supplies and disaster relief equipment. Please identify yourselves." The view screen flickered, then revealed the bridge of the alien vessel. Commander Tae-hyun stood center frame, his tall figure imposing even through the screen. His skin had a faint bluish tinge, his eyes large and dark. "This is Commander Tae-hyun, of the Dole Empire," he replied, his translator converting his clicking speech to human language. "Your presence in our territory is unauthorized. Your claims of rescue are transparent deception." Ji-woo kept her expression neutral. "Commander, I assure you, we're responding to genuine distress calls. We have no territorial ambitions here. If this system falls under your protection, perhaps we could coordinate our relief efforts." "There are no distress signals," Tae-hyun interrupted. "This was a simple trap, and you have fallen into it. The Dole Empire does not permit unregistered species to operate in our space." Ji-woo's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. "Commander, there's been a misunderstanding. We can withdraw immediately if..." The transmission cut off abruptly. On the tactical display, the 3 Dole warships accelerated to attack speed. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Ji-woo ordered. "Power up defensive shields." But it was too late. The Dole ships launched a coordinated assault, energy weapons slicing through space. The Earth fleet, designed for humanitarian missions rather than combat, had only basic defensive capabilities. The first volley tore through the outer ships. The transport vessel Goodwill exploded in a violent flash, its cargo of terraforming equipment erupting into space. The supply ship Provider lost its engine section, spinning helplessly as its crew fought to seal breaches. "Return fire," Jiwoo commanded, gripping the rail as the Hope's horizon shuddered under enemy fire. "Target their weapon systems only, Father." Few point defense cannons on the Earth ships activated, firing desperately at the attackers. But their weapons were meant for asteroid defense, not warfare, and the shots dissipated harmlessly against the dull shields. On the medical flagship Mercy, Dr. Hyunjin rushed through crowded corridors as alarms blared. 3,000 medical personnel and patients were aboard, surgeons, nurses, specialists in alien physiology, and hundreds of volunteers. "Move to the escape pods," he shouted, helping a fallen nurse to her feet. "Everyone, stay calm and—" His words were cut short as a direct hit rocked the massive hospital ship. Emergency lights flickered as the power grid failed. Back on the Hope's horizon, Jiwoo watched in horror as the Mercy took a devastating blow to its central section. "The Mercy is breaking apart," Sun Hee cried. "Their reactor's going critical. Get everyone off that ship." Jiwoo ordered, her voice cracking. Communications Officer Hanbit shook his head, tears in his eyes. "They're not responding, Admiral. I'm not getting any escape pod launches." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the Mercy, the pride of Earth's medical fleet, shattered into pieces, taking with it thousands of the planet's best doctors, nurses, and aid workers. "Prepare jump drives on all remaining vessels," Jiwoo ordered, her face ashen. "We can't win this fight." "But Admiral," Sun Hee protested, "the distress call—" "Was a trap," Jiwoo finished grimly. "We've been set up. Save who we can." As the Dole ships closed in for the kill, the remaining Earth vessels frantically calculated emergency jump coordinates. The Hope's horizon shuddered as another hit damaged its port side. "Jump drives charging," reported Navigation Officer Junho. 30 seconds to jump capability. Jiwoo opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships record everything, every second of this attack. Earth needs to know what happened here." The Dole vessels pressed their advantage, methodically targeting engines and life support systems. 8 Earth ships were already destroyed or disabled. The survivors, just 3 vessels including the Hope's horizon, activated their emergency systems. "Jump drives ready," Junho called out. "Get us out of here," Jiwoo ordered, watching as the last images of the massacre filled her view screen. The 3 surviving ships vanished into faster-than-light jumps, carrying with them the recordings of an unprovoked slaughter and the seeds of humanity's vengeance. Behind them, Commander Tai-hyun watched the escape with mild annoyance. "Let them go," he told his weapons officer. "Let them carry our message back to Earth. They'll know better than to enter our territory again." It was a miscalculation that would soon prove fatal for the Dole Empire. The Hope's horizon limped into Earth orbit, its hull scarred and blackened. Of the 15 ships that had departed on the rescue mission, only 3 returned. Admiral Jiwoo, Kim stood silently on the bridge as the blue planet grew larger in the view screen. Her uniform was wrinkled from 3 days of continuous wear, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep. "We're being hailed by Space Command Headquarters," Communications Officer Hanbit said quietly. "They're requesting immediate transmission of our mission logs." Jiwoo nodded. "Send everything, every second of the attack. Hold nothing back." Within hours, the footage spread across Earth's networks. People gathered in homes, public squares, and workplaces to watch the unprovoked slaughter of their humanitarian fleet. The destruction of the medical flagship Mercy, with its 3,000 civilian doctors, nurses, and aid workers, hit especially hard. News channels ran continuous coverage, showing the faces of the lost alongside clips of the Dole commander's cold dismissal of Earth's peaceful intentions. In Seoul, a young boy placed flowers at a memorial wall, where names of the dead scrolled endlessly. In Lagos, a crowd of thousands stood in silent vigil, holding candles against the night. From Shanghai to Buenos Aires, humanity mourned as one, but grief quickly hardened into something else. President Do-hyun addressed the United Nations General Assembly 3 days after the survivors' return. The chamber was unnaturally quiet as he approached the podium. "For the first time in our history," he began, his voice steady despite his obvious fatigue, "humanity reached out to help another species in distress. We sent our best, not soldiers, but healers, not conquerors but helpers. In response, this Dole Empire committed an act of mass murder against unarmed civilians. He paused, looking across the assembly. Let me be absolutely clear. This will not stand. The slaughter of our peacekeepers demands a response. Not out of vengeance, but because if we allow this atrocity to go unanswered, we announce to the galaxy that humans can be killed without consequence. The chamber erupted in thunderous applause. Representatives from nations that had been bitter enemies for centuries stood together, united by shared outrage. At Space Command headquarters in Geneva, military leaders gathered for emergency planning sessions. Admiral Ji-Woo Kim, promoted to fleet commander after her return, sat at the center of the war room. Around her, screens displayed analysis of the Dole ships and weapons. Their technology is advanced, General Yuna stated, pointing to the tactical displays, but not unbeatable. From what we can tell, they've grown complacent. They expected us to cower after their show of force. Admiral Kim nodded. They think, we're primitive newcomers. That's an advantage we can exploit. Across Earth, the industrial transformation began. Shipyards that had been building container vessels and space stations now constructed warships. Defensive shield technology, originally designed to protect colonies from solar radiation, was repurposed for combat. Manufacturing plants that produced terraforming equipment now created weaponry. In research labs worldwide, scientists worked around the clock. At the Seoul Advanced Physics Institute, Dr. Jin Woo led a team analyzing the Dole energy signatures. They use a form of quantum targeting for their weapons, he explained to visiting military officials. Very precise, very deadly. But it has a weakness. Their systems can't track objects using our new phase shift technology. Similar breakthroughs happened everywhere. Humanity's greatest minds, spurred by collective purpose, achieved in months what might normally take decades. 3 months after the attack, Admiral Kim walked through the massive construction bay of the orbital shipyard. Above her, the fleet flagship Justice neared completion, a warship unlike anything humanity had built before. Unlike the sleek, white vessels of the humanitarian fleet, this ship was angular, its dark hull designed to absorb enemy scans rather than reflect them. Shipyard Director Haeun guided her through the chaos of construction. We've incorporated everything learned from the attack. These ships can withstand direct hits from Dole weapons and the offensive capabilities. She trailed off, gesturing to the massive weapon mounts. How many vessels will be ready for the first wave? Kim asked. 20 capital ships, plus 50 smaller attack craft, with more being finished every week. Kim nodded, satisfaction evident in her tired eyes. And the special modifications. Haeun lowered her voice. The terraforming equipment has been successfully weaponized as requested. The atmospheric converters can now be used to destabilize planetary environments without causing permanent damage. As you specified, we can force evacuations without civilian casualties. Meanwhile, in the rebuilt Security Council chamber, President Do-hyun met with Admiral Kim and the military high command. The room was secure, with no recordings permitted. Operation Righteous Fury is ready to launch, Admiral Kim reported. Our intelligence suggests the Dole have no idea what's coming. They've made no significant defensive preparations. General Dae-hyun, head of ground forces, added, they believe the attack accomplished its goal, frightening us away from their territory. Our observers report normal activity at their border outposts. President Do-hyun looked at each person in the room. I want to be absolutely clear about our objectives. This is not about conquest or territory. We will strike with overwhelming force, but we will not become like them. No civilian targets, no indiscriminate destruction. We demonstrate that humanity can be both terrifying in war and merciful in victory. The room filled with solemn nods. One more thing, the president added. I want Commander Tae-hyun taken alive if possible. The one who gave the order to fire on our medical ships should face justice, not martyrdom. 3 days later, Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Justice. As the war fleet prepared to depart, through the view screen, Earth glowed blue and peaceful against the blackness of space. Communications Officer Minji turned from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Geneva. It's being broadcast to all ships. The main screen showed President Do-hyun, his expression grave but determined. "Men and women of the fleet," he began, "you carry with you not just the weapons of war but the conscience of humanity. Remember those we lost. Remember why we fight. And remember who we are." As the President finished, Admiral Kim gave the order that would echo through history. "All ships prepare for jump. Operation Righteous Fury begins now." The massive war fleet built by a unified humanity in just 4 months vanished into faster-than-light travel, heading toward Dole territory with terrible purpose. On a distant monitoring station, a Dole observer noted unusual energy readings from the Sol system. After brief consideration, he filed a low-priority report about possible primitive FTL experiments by the newly discovered humans. By the time the report reached Commander Taehyun's desk, the human fleet was already at his doorstep. Commander Taehyun stood before the Imperial Council, his posture confident despite the tension in the chamber. The 7 eldest members of the Dole Empire watched him with their large, unblinking eyes. "These humans pose no significant threat," Taehyun assured them, gesturing to the holographic display of Earth's solar system. "Our analysis shows they only recently achieved faster-than-light capability. Their weapons are primitive, their ships fragile. We destroyed most of their fleet with minimal effort." High Elder Seojun leaned forward. "Yet you allowed 3 vessels to escape," Taehyun waved dismissively. "A calculated decision. The survivors will spread fear among their kind. They will know better than to enter our territory again." "And if they seek revenge instead?" asked Elder Jihi, her voice soft but pointed. Taehyun almost laughed. "With what? Their technology is centuries behind ours. We've conquered 26 species more advanced than humans." The council session ended with increased border patrols as the only precaution. None of them imagined what was already heading for their way. At the edge of Dole territory, the automated defense platform Sentinel-12 detected unusual energy signatures. The AI registered multiple objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel, but classified them as a meteor shower when no standard ship configurations were identified. This was the first of many fatal errors in Dole defense systems. They were programmed to recognize ships, not the radical designs humanity had created in just 4 months. The colony world Dole Secundus received no warning before the human fleet arrived in their skies. Governor Minhee was enjoying breakfast when her aide burst into the room. "Governor, unknown vessels in orbit." She rushed to the command center, arriving just as the first transmission came through. Admiral Jiwoo Kim's face appeared on screen. "This is the Earth Fleet Justice. Your colony is now surrounded. We have no desire to harm civilians. You have 6 hours to evacuate all non-military personnel to these designated areas." The governor scoffed. "This is Dole territory. You have no authority here. Our defense grid will—" "Your defense grid has been neutralized," Kim interrupted, calmly. "Check your systems." Minhee turned to her chief of security, who was frantically working at his console. He looked up with shocked eyes. "She's right. Our satellites are offline. The orbital platforms aren't responding." On the screen, Admiral Kim continued. "We're transmitting evacuation zones now. Any civilian found outside these areas after the deadline will be at risk." The transmission ended. Governor Minhee ordered immediate counterattacks, but the planet's defense ships discovered their weapons wouldn't fire. The targeting systems had been corrupted by microscopic infiltration drones launched days earlier. 6. Hours later, with the civilian evacuation complete, the humans deployed their first terrible innovation, weaponized terraforming. Massive ships positioned themselves in the upper atmosphere and activated what appeared to be standard atmospheric converters. But these had been modified with a singular purpose. Within hours, the air around military installations became saturated, with a compound that disabled Dole respiratory systems without harming the planet itself. Dole soldiers collapsed, unable to breathe, while civilians in the safe zones remained unaffected. Ground forces from Earth landed unopposed, securing the colony without a single shot fired. This pattern repeated across 6 outer colonies in just 2 weeks. The Dole Empire, which had stood unchallenged for centuries, suddenly found itself losing territory at an unprecedented rate. What made the human approach particularly devastating was its precision. They targeted military assets while scrupulously avoiding civilian casualties. At the imperial capital, Commander Tae-hyun was hastily summoned before the council again. This time his confidence was gone. "How is this possible?" demanded High Elder Seojun. "You said they were primitive." "They were," Tae-hyun insisted, desperation in his voice. "They shouldn't have been able to develop these technologies so quickly." "Something is wrong." "What's wrong," hissed Elder Jihye, "is that you catastrophically underestimated them. Our intelligence now suggests they've adapted our own shield technology based on scans from your attack. They're learning at an impossible rate." Reports flooded in from across the Empire. A fleet of what appeared to be human mining vessels approached the vital shipyards at Dole Octavus. Defense forces dismissed them as a non-threat until the seemingly harmless ships discharged antimatter warheads, destroying the Empire's largest production facility in blinding flashes of light. Commercial transports, indistinguishable from the thousands that moved between Dole worlds every day, suddenly activated powerful electromagnetic pulse generators in high orbit over military bases, frying communications and defense systems below. Most disturbing of all was how quickly humans adapted to Dole countermeasures. When the Empire deployed a new shield frequency, human weapons would penetrate it within days. When Dole ships changed tactics, humans seemed to anticipate the shifts. "They're inside our networks," Security Chief Jinwan finally determined. "They've compromised our central command systems." On the bridge of the Justice, Admiral Kim reviewed the latest battlefront updates. 23 Dole worlds neutralized. 15 major fleet engagements, all human victories. Casualty reports showed minimal human losses compared to devastating Dole defeats. "Admiral," called out her tactical officer, "the Dole are pulling their remaining capital ships back to their homeworld." Intelligence Officer Yunji approached with a data tablet. "They're panicking now. Intercepted communications show they can't understand our strategy, why we're not killing civilians, why we're being so selective. They judge us by their own standards," Kim replied quietly. "They can't conceive of strength without cruelty." As the human fleet pressed deeper into Dole territory, they encountered increasingly desperate resistance. The Dole threw everything they had at the invaders: ancient weapons platforms, civilian ships packed with explosives, even suicide attacks. Nothing slowed humanity's advance. On the Dole homeworld, Commander Tae-hyun stood in the Supreme Defense Center, watching as the holodisplay showed human ships methodically dismantling the outer defense ring. His once impeccable uniform was wrinkled, his posture defeated. "They've broken through Sector 9, reported a junior officer, fear evident in his voice. 57 human capital ships approaching." "How?" Tae-hyun whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "How did they advance so quickly?" A grizzled admiral nearby answered anyway, "Because you showed them our technology when you attacked their unarmed ships. You gave them both the means and the motivation to destroy us." On the main screen, the human flagship Justice appeared, leading the massive armada toward the Dole capital. Its black hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, a visual embodiment of the dark retribution heading their way. Tae-hyun stared at the approaching fleet, finally understanding the terrible truth. The attack on Earth's rescue mission hadn't been a show of Dole power. It had been the beginning of their end. He reached for the communication controls. There was only one option left. "Open a channel to the human flagship," he ordered. "I need to speak with Admiral Kim." Too late, the mighty Dole Empire learned what humans had always known, that compassion and mercy were not signs of weakness, but the privilege of the truly strong, and that those who mistook kindness for fragility did so at their peril. The Dole homeworld hung against the blackness of space, its blue-green surface looking deceptively peaceful from orbit. Around it, the remnants of the once mighty Dole defense fleet drifted in disarray, some ships damaged, others simply waiting, weapons powered down. Surrounding them in a perfect formation was the Earth Armada, over 200 vessels strong, their hulls bearing the scars of the brief but decisive campaign. On the bridge of the Justice, Admiral Ji-woo Kim studied the tactical display. Every Dole military installation on the planet was targeted, every defensive capability neutralized. With a single command, she could reduce their civilization to ashes. "Admiral," Communications Officer Minji said, "Commander Tae-hyun is hailing." Us again. This is the third request in the past hour. Kim nodded. Put him through. The main view screen showed the Dole commander. Once arrogant and commanding, he now looked haggard, the blue tinge of his skin paler than before. Admiral Kim, he began, his translator conveying his strained tone. Your forces have prevailed. We acknowledge your victory. I ask only that you allow time for further civilian evacuations before you begin planetary bombardment. A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Kim raised an eyebrow. You assume we intend to destroy your world? Of course, Taehyun replied, confusion evident in his large eyes. It's what any conqueror would do. It's what we would have done in your position. Kim shook her head slowly. Then you still don't understand us, Commander. Prepare your central government for my arrival. I will deliver our terms in person. 2 hours later, a single human shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the Dole homeworld. Inside, Admiral Kim sat calmly, reviewing final intelligence reports. Across from her, Captain Sumin looked considerably more nervous. Are you certain this is wise, Admiral? She asked quietly. Going to the surface yourself? Necessary symbolism, Kim replied. They need to see that we're not afraid, that we come face to face with those we defeat. The shuttle landed in the massive central plaza of the Dole capital city. Thousands of civilians had gathered, held back by barriers and nervous guards. Many had never seen a human before, and they whispered among themselves as Admiral Kim emerged. Flanked by a small security detail, the Imperial Council chambers were a marvel of architecture, soaring ceilings with light filtering through crystalline structures, creating patterns on the polished floor. The 7 Dole elders sat on elevated seats, with Commander Taehyun standing before them. All rose as Kim entered. You honor us by coming in person, said High Elder Seojin, his formal tone barely masking his fear. I come to offer terms, Kim replied simply. Not to gloat. She stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed Earth's original humanitarian fleet. 4 months ago, these ships carried medicine, food, and hope to a dying civilization. Your commander chose to destroy them, killing thousands of our doctors and aid workers, people who had never harmed anyone. The display shifted to show the current Earth armada surrounding the Dole homeworld. Now we could destroy your civilization as easily as you destroyed our unarmed vessels, but that is not our way. Kim laid out humanity's terms. The Dole would surrender all military vessels and dismantle their weapons production facilities. A human-led council would govern Dole territory for 50 years, after which sovereignty would return to them, and, most significantly, the Dole would contribute resources, technology, and personnel to a new humanitarian mission, rebuilding the civilization in the Proxima system that their actions had prevented humans from saving. Not punishment, Kim explained, but restitution. Not vengeance, but justice. The elders conferred briefly before High Elder Seojin spoke. Your terms are unexpected. We are accustomed to victors who take everything and leave nothing. Then perhaps it's time for new customs, Kim replied. As human forces secured Dole military assets across their once vast empire, they made a startling discovery. On 23 worlds previously marked as uninhabited resource planets on Dole, star charts they found enslaved populations, species conquered and exploited by the Dole Empire over centuries. On the agricultural world, Dole Quintus, Lieutenant Hyunji led a scout team into what had been listed as an automated processing facility. Instead, they found thousands of small furred beings working in brutal conditions, harvesting crops they would never consume. They call themselves the Nari, Hyunji reported back to Fleet Command. They've been enslaved for 9 generations. There are similar situations on at least 5 other worlds. As news of these discoveries spread, humanity's mission evolved. General Yuna established liberation protocols, and Earthships began arriving at these hidden labor camps. Medical teams treated the malnourished workers, while engineers dismantled the control systems that had kept them captive. On one such world, a tiny female Nari approached Dr. Jinwoo as he treated injuries in a field hospital. She carried a small carved figure, which she pressed into his hand. For Sky people, she said in broken trade language, who came when no one came before. Word of humanity's actions traveled quickly through subspace communications that the Dole had never bothered to monitor. Species that had hidden from the Empire for centuries cautiously made contact with Earth vessels. Trade ships from distant systems altered course to observe the newcomers who had accomplished what many had thought impossible. 6 months after the surrender, Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck of the Justice, now orbiting the rehabilitated Proxima Centauri system. Below, the first wave of terraforming equipment, originally meant for the rescue mission, was finally being deployed, preparing a new home for refugees from the dying world. Captain Somin joined her at the viewport. The Dole technicians are actually proving quite helpful with the atmospheric converters. Apparently they've never used their technology this way before. Kim nodded. Amazing what people can accomplish when they're not trying to dominate each other. There's a delegation arriving from the Galactic Concord, Somin added. 7 species we've never encountered before. They're requesting a diplomatic meeting. The Dole always claimed the Concord was a myth, Kim mused. Apparently, they've been watching us since we defeated the Dole. They're cautious. They want to understand what kind of power humanity represents. Kim turned from the viewport, watching as the shuttles from Earth delivered more supplies to the planet below. Show them this, she said simply. Show them what we choose to do with our strength. In the months and years that followed, humanity established itself as something new in the galaxy, not conquerors or subjugators, but protectors. Earthships responded to distress calls that other powers ignored. Human diplomats mediated conflicts between ancient enemies. And the message spread across the stars. The humans of Earth would extend friendship to any who sought peaceful coexistence, but would respond with overwhelming force to those who threatened the innocent. On the anniversary of the attack on Earth's rescue fleet, a memorial was unveiled in orbit above Earth. It displayed the names of every person lost in the original massacre, alongside images of the worlds and species now thriving under humanity's protection. The final line, inscribed in Earth's many languages and those of their new allies, simply read, "From great loss came greater purpose. We remember not only how they died, but what they lived for." The galaxy had learned what Commander Tae-hyun discovered too late, that humanity's capacity for compassion was matched only by its capacity for righteous fury when that compassion was betrayed.